freue mich sehr, dass im Falter-Studio in der Wiener Innenstadt der Botschafter des Staates Israel in Österreich Platz genommen hat. Guten Tag, Herr Botschafter.
Good day, thank you so much.
Und wir werden dieses Gespräch mit Botschafter David Roet auf Englisch führen. David Roet just started his assignment in Austria last month, in September. That correct? He has been a leading diplomat for Israel for many years in the foreign ministry in Israel, at the United Nations in New York and in the United States. This talk is part of a show where we had invited also the Palestinian ambassador, and he had been here an hour ago, and we asked him if he would have a question for you, sort of. And he hesitated a little bit, and then he said, well, why don't you ask the Israeli ambassador what can be the political outcome of this war and this terrible tragedy we are living now? So I convey that question to you.
Well, I'll just start by saying that I've been here a month, but in my feelings, it's generations ago or 1,000 years ago. I can almost not remember the first 4 or 5 wonderful days in beautiful Vienna as the world changed for us on October 7th. And the Palestinian representative's question, I would have a ready-made answer on October 6th. And I think it is now much more difficult to say. I always believed that there is a resolution to the conflict. I believed always that it was not a religious conflict, that the two sides can find a solution for it. Unfortunately, after October 7th, not only were Israeli brutally slaughtered and killed, and I'm sure we will killed and kidnapped, and I'm sure we will speak about it, but also the belief in peace would be very hard for Israelis to trust their neighbors. But at some point, we will resolve the conflict.
Maybe let's stay with October 7th, since you mentioned it now. First of all, I think not only you or all Israelis are in shock. I think the world was in shock about this pogrom that Hamas inflicted on 1,400 Israelis on that day. Since then, we have heard so many stories of victims and their relatives, heard so much in videos and in photographs and in interviews. Are you by now sure that all victims have been identified? It seems so difficult to actually point to how many people were actually killed and how many are hostages. We are now at the number of 239 hostages that have been taken. So can you explain this a little bit, how this process goes?
Yeah, we have one happy news in the last month, and that is that the Israeli army, not Hamas, released an Israeli young girl, young soldier, by military activity. So it's now 234, but the numbers will grow. It is amazing to comprehend that there are still tens, if not hundreds, who have not been identified. And the rationale for that, and I excuse the listener, is the horrific, unbelievable conditions of the bodies that we found that do not make it possible for the high-tech nation, a leading nation, to identify some of them. One of them was, while we had that very good story of one Israeli hostage released, there was a young girl, German-Israeli, who we were looking for her. Terrible pictures from Gaza of what they're doing. Now we know it's to her body, half naked, spitted on, and limbs broken, and who knows what was done to this poor girl. And we identified her yesterday based on a certain bone in the skull, which the Israeli army found, which brought us to the decision that the person could not live with that part. So it is so difficult. I'm sorry to say to you and to your listener, they butchered, they mutilated, They burned babies alive in tires. They made children watch their parents being killed and tortured before, and vice versa. They took an old woman, a 90-year-old Holocaust survivor with a family, loving family. I think of her a lot as a second generation of Holocaust survivor, how happy she probably was and how proud she was that she built her life after the camp. And then they put her head on the floor and they shot her in the same way which would have been done during the Holocaust. So it's horrific scenes that we've seen, and it's very, very difficult to find. We don't know also. We have some signs of life, witnesses or photographs or videos that we know that some people were alive. We don't know their condition, and some people, we just don't know where they are.
Is the idea that the hostages in Gaza will be freed in the same way that the young soldier has been freed yesterday, has been freed through a commando action of the Israeli military, or don't we have, in order to get these hostages free, don't you have to negotiate?
Well, I don't think. I would love to believe that there is a military solution where we can find all of them. I don't think that would be possible in terms of military solution of Israeli soldiers going into the tunnels and bringing all of them. We don't know how many are alive, as I've said. We've seen what they did on October 7th. We can only think of what they were doing since then to them. So certainly, I understand your point. This is not how it's going to happen. But we believe you can't negotiate with people who intentionally send people to kill civilians. Had they only killed the Israeli soldiers, had there been a few or even more civilians that they would call collateral damage, I could say we are dealing with a very strong enemy which we have to destroy. They intentionally went. They had maps of the people. So I don't think there's anything to negotiate with them. I don't think you can trust them. We've been but we do believe that the only way to we have two aims to this conflict. One is to bring our hostages back home. The second is to uproot Hamas. There is no negotiation with Hamas. There is no possible way to believe that we will find a way at the end of this conflict in which Israel will be side by side with a Hamas-run Gaza. It's also against the interest of the Palestinian people.
What concretely does it mean to uproot Hamas, destruction of Hamas? That is the aim of the military action in Gaza now, declared aim of Israel. What does it concretely mean?
It is very difficult to do. It is also difficult to explain, as I think you're insinuating. I cannot uproot the hate. I cannot uproot 17 years of the world letting a terrorist organization educate the Palestinian people. I cannot, people will have their ideology or the views, but what we will not have is a Gaza-run, a Hamas-run Gaza. So this means uprooting any of their abilities to control Gaza, to have weapons, and to run Gaza. We will get every single one of the leaders who made the decision to go after Israeli civilians. We will go after everyone, and they were unwise enough to put into film everything that they've did. So every one of them will be put to justice, not as revenge, but as putting them to justice. So it will be complicated. It never was a cycle of conflict. It never was logical what Hamas has been doing. But now we see a Gaza without Hamas. Very difficult, and sorry for the long answer, very difficult to foresee what will be. Had your Palestinian guest before and his leaders being able to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization, to say what they've been telling us behind closed doors, take out Hamas, for so many years. Had they not been as corrupt as they are, have they not been as without seeing the future and being brave enough to make peace, maybe they would be the one that might be able to take care of Gaza, but they don't seem to be going that way. So we will have to find some kind of a solution.
But let's stay for a bit. You rightly say that the terrorists who came into the kibbutzim inflicted as much suffering and pain, torture and death on the civilians that they found. And that was a plan also according to what was found on the dead fighters later. But in terms of where the hostages are held now, we saw how one of the Israeli hostages who got released, fortunately, Yocheved Lifshitz, she thanked or said goodbye to the Hamas guy who brought her over. And it seems that also what she said in the interviews afterwards, that she was treated okay. Not fun to be a hostage in any case, but she was not tortured and she was given food. And so it seems that there are also different parts of the Hamas leadership doing different things. So, of course, you have the military wing, Al-Qassam brigades, who planned the attack. You have a political part, and I understand that nobody on the Israeli government side now wants to negotiate with anyone on the Hamas side. But in the interest of the hostages, it might be to pick up the signals that maybe mediators in Qatar could send in order to see what could be done in the long run. For example, releasing young children could be very much on the top of the list of priorities of who to release or who to liberate.
There are so many aspects in your questions. First, and you know that the word the Stockholm syndrome and whatever I can bring up of what hostages are and everyone, but it is, people who were wise enough, cruel enough, barbaric enough, but also using AI and modern technology, they know who to free. They were wise enough to do that. So it is, we saw that poor German Israeli and how she was treated. We saw an Israeli woman put on jeep on October 7th, bleeding from areas that you understand. I'm so sorry that you understand what was done to there. So we have I hope and I wish many would be treated in this way. To your second part of your question, I don't think after October 7th we can distinguish between. I never thought so, but I think the world should now understand you cannot distinguish between a political and military wing of Hamas. They're terrorists. We made that mistake. We are not allowed to make this mistake again. I ignored. I spoke about it as a diplomat for many years, but we basically ignored the charter that says we will kill all Jews, not only in Israel. We'll tear their heart out. They teared their heart out. They teared embryos from a pregnant woman. We must believe in what they say and in the statement. So there is no military and non-military Hamas leadership, different with the Palestinian Authority, as much as I'm so disappointed by their reaction, which gives me much less hope than before. Will countries such as Qatar, Egypt, that's the third part of your question, we're not stopping them from telling Hamas, get out of here. If Hamas leaves, I have no qualms to the Palestinian people. If Hamas leave, if the leadership leaves, if they tell them, if they want protection for their own people, and they don't, obviously, release the refugees, the kidnapped Israelis.
I mean, the action
and leave the area.
The military action in Gaza is, according to the aim you name, is against Hamas, but the people suffering all the inhabitants of Gaza, 2 million people. They have to leave their homes. Their houses are bombed. Thousands and thousands of victims, children. I think 3,000 children in Gaza died, and they died because of the political situation, but they died from Israeli bombs and Israeli weapons. So the question that many people in the world have is that corrective punishment. Do you in reality punish? Does Israel punish millions of Palestinians because of what a couple of hundred terrorists have done?
To your last question, I was very long in my other questions. No. We don't have collective punishment. And this view is, I object to it tremendously. But may I ask you something I don't usually do? What solutions, what would you suggest to the Austrian government if a band of death squad would go into your town, rape and kill your women, dismember babies, kill and burn everyone? What is the Israeli reaction should be? Would Austria say, yes, let's provide them with electricity, let's provide them with water, let's continue as it was? I have 200,000, I will speak about the Palestinian, 200,000 of my people, 200,000 people are left their houses. What government can assure the people to go back to the borders? To me, it doesn't matter. I'm sure to you it doesn't matter. A person is a person, whether they're Palestinian, whether they're Israeli, or whether they are settlers. You know, they use settlers as if they are subhuman or just a little bit of human. But for everybody who's worried, as if it's okay to kill settlers, the people living in the border in Israel, it is pre-67 line in Israel. Most of the people in the kibbutzim are from the central and left, working for peace with the Palestinians. So what is Israel to do? To say, okay, come on in, guys, let's do it again. So we must find a solution. And we cannot negotiate with Hamas because they proved it. Does anybody believe that the person that sent those people and the people that did that, did they have a grievance on why are Israeli settlements too large and why don't we have a Palestinian state? And is this what they went to when you bash a baby and you kill him or you kidnap? When you do an orchestrated, planned campaign of rape, not by nature, but so would this solve it? Had Israel said, okay, now you can have a state? So collective punishment, it's not. We believe the world should put responsibility to the same people that the world wants to rule the Palestinian Authority. We ask people to leave to the. We tell people where we are going to attack. It's not Israel's fault that Hamas is under hospital and living by you. And we tell the people, listen, you know that they are in your house. You know that they are using the basement to produce or to shoot from. Leave that place. I'm very, very uneasy with the population having to move from their houses and houses being shot at because you have terrorists living from within your facility. But the responsibility should be on the de facto leaders of Gaza.
But many also of the victims' families and many of the families of the hostages in Israel are actually calling on the Israeli government to keep in mind that this grave bombing of the Gaza Strip might not only result in a lot of civilian deaths on the Palestinian side, but also endangers the life of the hostages. Does this plea reach you?
Yes, I'm not the one dealing with this. I would not wish to be on the people with this unfortunate dilemma. But we believe, and we've had an experience with Hamas, with people who were kidnapped and held, including 2 Israelis, not soldiers, 2 Israeli, 1 Bedouin, Arab, by the way, 50 50 Bedouins, Israeli Muslims, were killed by those terrorists. But we had an Israeli Bedouin Muslim civilian with mental issues, as well as an Israeli Ethiopian with the born Jew who also mental issues, and we've been negotiating with through people were negotiating with Hamas for the last, almost 8-9 years. So they're not going to be released by sugarcoating it and by saying, okay, guys, we'll stop, please return them. So we still believe that the more force we show, the only way to release them, if they understand that the equation have changed. The same people who orchestrated this campaign of murder and planned for it for more than 2 years have also planned for an Israeli reaction. And what we need now to do is to surprise them, to understand that the resolve is different. But it is a dilemma where I really don't want to be in the shoes of decision makers on that. But head of the government have to take care of the millions and millions of people that they have their citizens.
The head of the government in Israel also faces a lot of criticism for the time before October 7th and for the fact that neither the security system nor the government picked up on the fact that Hamas planned this attack, and that also a lot of the usual army was busy protecting settlers in the West Bank instead of securing the area around Gaza. Can you comment on that? Because it seems that people within Israel are really, really angry about this.
We're, what Israel is feeling now is, I talk calmly, but we are enraged and angry and sad. There's not one Israeli, including the person in front of you, who does not know people who were killed or missing or kidnapped or injured. The generation of my children, they go from one funeral to the other. My daughter knows people who were killed, people who are missing, people who are kidnapped. So we're all enraged, and we certainly have many, many questions. We have questions which will have to be dealt with. We have questions for the military administration. We have questions for the political, including for the prime minister. And I think it is clear, there's a lot of criticism, but it is clear to most that what we have to do is first we have to win the war. And then I cannot tell you what Israel we will find. I grew up in the shadow of the Yom Kippur War. I was too young I was a child in the Yom Kippur War. It still haunts us 50 years later. So we will have to look into all those issues and what to do. But at this point, we will let the chosen leadership, it seems, and the army to do what they need to do.
I think it's in Europe, certainly, also in the United States, it's completely clear that a state that has been attacked, where the citizens have been attacked, needs to defend itself. And Israel had been attacked. But there are different ways where you can defend yourself. And in the whole global south of this world, the impression is that Israel is attacking Hamas, not Hamas, but is attacking all of Gaza. And if you look at the pictures, the destruction in the houses, the people in hospitals trying cramped, and then they have the order that they have to leave within I don't know how many hours, and then the bombing starts at the place where they were supposed to be safe, and the children. And this fact that there are 3,000 Palestinian children died from the Israeli attacks. Is that not in Gaza? Is that not a moment where also there should be some empathy with the civilians in Gaza who are suffering from that situation?
I have tremendous empathy with the Palestinian if you got it different. Complete one. I mean, we're not intending to hurt Palestinian people. The only one protecting, trying to protect, and I know people, it's patronizing and people will be angry for me saying it and whatever, but the only one that seems to care a bit or a lot about the Palestinian population is the Israelis. And I'll explain to you why I'm making this statement, knowing that people will roll their eyes. People, Gaza, we've been mentioned, Gaza has another border. If anybody worries about why, let's say we are the worst people in the world. Civilians can go over to Egypt. They're not being led to. They have built the Hamas. If they are such great people, the Hamas has been building tunnels. Imagine what they could have done with all the concrete and all the money and all the investment in building an underground system that they could have done. They can put instead of putting their soldiers, they can put the Palestinian people there. The demand of the world should be for Hamas to get out. I will not promise them immunity if they get out. But if Hamas leadership says, okay, we're laying down our arms, we're moving to... Nobody, the Arab world likes to cry on their behalf, but will anybody take them? I don't know. But let's say, okay, other countries can take them. They could save the Palestinian children. So had we wanted to demolish, I hear all this, sorry for my language, garbage, genocide. If Israel wants, the strongest power in the Middle East, and probably in other ways as well, very strong. If we want to genocide, if we want to demolish the Palestinian Gaza, we could do that in probably half a day. And we're also logical people.
Don't even say something like that.
I know.
Also, it is just so monstrous to even think
but people are calling genocide.
Like
people are saying genocide. My heart goes out to the Palestinian people that they have this. I will not say that again because you are right. But, our heart goes out to them. It sounds cynical. Some Israelis not because they saw Holocaust-like treatment of themselves. But I don't know of any other way except taking them out. I think it's the most logical thing that somebody has to realize.
You are Israelis attacking Gaza in order to get rid of terrorists. Isn't that the cycle that we have seen many times? That through anti-terrorist activities, more terrorists are created than there had been before. If you look at the reaction of many parts of the world, the Arab world, but not only, to the destruction in Gaza, isn't that a situation where at the end you will have more people ready to take arms if they can and fight Israel than before? So very politically, a very dangerous situation, isn't it?
Yes, you actually, this is where I was going. We are rational people. We're strategical thinking people. I know that while I know that the reason for the destruction and for civilian unfortunate casualties lies in the hand of Hamas fully, and their appeasers and their supporters, and Iran, which has been financing them and will fight till the last blood drop of the Palestinians, I know that there are people sitting in shelters or non-shelters or being bombed, and that they will feel differently. So why are we doing it? So can somebody explain to me, in any of those youngsters or descendant, Palestinian descendant or others who are demonstrating in Vienna, what should I do and what is the logical of this attack? Do we want to go back to Gaza? Did we start this with Gaza? We left Gaza. People don't remember anymore. We left Gaza, was very, very controversial in Israel. We left them the ability to become a normal state or quasi-state or whatever. Yes, we were worried about their security issue. Why? Because we were afraid that they'll come in and they'll rape our women and kill our children. But had the leadership moved on, started an industry, they had an airport, they had a port, possibility for a port, they had greenhouses that were left with them. They're very talented people, as we've seen, unfortunately, from the bedside. So they could have done that. They still could, but they need to uproot them. I don't know of a better a solution to that. So your suggestion means, okay, we will give you another chance. We will put back our children. They will not go back by our civilians to the border without any assurances that it will not happen again. It's okay. You're fine. They're shooting. We haven't spoken about rockets who are falling on my cities and on other cities. And then it's all fire and dandy. So,
do you think that there is a military solution to this problem of the Middle East conflict?
Not at all. Not at all.
So we need other solutions. So let's go maybe through a few scenarios. One, that Haaretz yesterday got a paper out of the securities ministry that had among one of the scenarios what could happen in Gaza, that hundreds and thousands of Palestinians could be placed in the Sinai under Egyptian rule, which some people would, of course, call ethnic cleansing. Egypt doesn't want it. The Palestinians don't want it, and that's why Egypt doesn't open the border, because they do not want it.
I don't want to start.
Okay,
I have enough people to argue with. I don't want to argue with the Egyptians. But is that why they're not allowing?
I think
or are they afraid of bringing Muslim Brotherhood inside their country?
Absolutely, they have already also their own problem with enough of the sort of Islamists in their own country. But there's an understanding in the Arab world since 1948 that the refugees that came then, the refugees that came in 1967, that they should not sort of be integrated in their countries because they want to keep up the political pressure for the Palestinians to get their own state. If we take
how has it been working for them?
It has not been working for anyone very well. Yes. But the question to you now is if this is one of the scenarios that you can see from the Israeli government side as being workable in order to solve the problem with the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
We nurture the peace with Egypt. It's far from being perfect, and I don't know of a government campaign. I read the article and what has been said, and I insinuated as well, but more to the effect that that when you criticize the Israelis, ask where is the whole Arab world coming together for the Palestinians.
To stay with the Israeli position.
But with that effect, I don't think we have our fringe as well, but any logical Israelis wants to really believes that you can take 2 million Palestinians, take them away from Gaza, and move them into the Sinai, it's just not a logical. So it is some constructed, some real maybe worries in the Arab world because of their history, and some fabricated worries. I mean, their issue is differently. All you're saying is whoever the civilians can move away, you can attack and kill the terrorists. So I don't think this is a real possibility. I know for a fact it's not a government plan, for sure. It's more people who are having some fantasies. With regards to the world, the reaction in the world, it is shocking to me. It is shocking to me, the demonstration. It's shocking to me that we let Hamas educate their people in this way in Gaza, but also that in the street of Vienna and Europe and whatever are uneducated people who are supporting feminists, who are supporting people who rape women for not only for pleasure, but as a way of war, and others. I have no problem with saying Israel was wrong in the last 57 years. Israel should have done more. You should give away the territories. You should let the Palestinian state be tomorrow. All of this is an argument once Hamas is gone.
Ambassador, there are hundreds of thousands that had been demonstrating for Palestine in London, hundreds of thousands in Turkey, and all over the world, in Malaysia, in the whole global south, and I would say half of Europe is engaged, not because they support people torturing other people, or they support the pogrom, but they are mobilized because of the suffering of the Gaza population. And in the United Nations, the vote in the United Nations General Assembly for a ceasefire was overwhelming. Even several European countries, Switzerland, France, Spain, have voted in favor of that ceasefire. Isn't that a situation where Israel would have to react to the dangerous dynamic of isolation of the state of Israel?
I beg to differ of how you characterize most of the demonstration in the world. If the BBC wants to call people in a Russian Republic who are overcrowding an airport, trying to attack a plane that they think is from Israel, taking passport away from people to check if they are Jews and wanting to kill Jews as a demonstration, then that's what the BBC can do, but hopefully not on your podcast. When people scream from the river to the sea, they mean from the Jordan, Palestine will be free. They don't speak about a two-state solution. They don't mean, and we've seen that in October 7th, they don't mean to provide me with business class tickets from Tel Aviv on Austrian Air to Vienna to come live in beautiful Vienna. They mean we're gonna kill all of them. So many of them are hateful, and I know there might be, maybe, I don't know the numbers. I don't see that in Pakistan, but maybe in Vienna there are naive folks who think as you said. But I see from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Not we're going to have a two-state solution on 67 and all of those issues. With regard to the UN, I used to say, look, and I served 4 years in the UN. Usually I say that it's 28 years because Israeli ambassadors and diplomats, they count it in dog years. I applaud Austria for standing firm on what Austria believes and voting against that resolution. I think that the time of appeasing an Arab majority or Muslim majority in the UN has come to an end. I believe that in diplomacy, it's a bit like personal relations. If you give in to a bully, you don't earn their respect. They actually ask you for more and they despise you. And this is what is going on in the UN for many, many years. It's a long story, but I will say the Arab group through Jordan had a resolution at the UN. It doesn't mention Hamas. It doesn't mention the atrocities that happened. It doesn't mention that there are Israeli kidnapped in Gaza.
And no countries are mentioned at all, I think, in that
resolution.
resolution.
Oh my God, yeah. That's so right. No countries
but
is
this
mentioned.
Was a resolution.
And then come the Canadian. And the Canadian add this little one. I might not have been happy with the resolution. And they get a majority, but you need a 2/3. That's technicality. And then you say, okay, well, we didn't get it. So it's okay that these guys, that we don't call out for refugee. And we believe what you just mentioned. You are very learned to know that. But oh my, that's really something. So a country and then they will come back for more and more and more. Humanitarian access that's an issue which was brought up now, and we are allowing entering. There's a lot of criticism by families. Israel is allowing humanitarian support, convoys into Gaza, while we don't know. The Red Cross doesn't really make a big effort. Why is the Red Cross not going in to see our refugees? Well, sorry, I'm saying refugees all the time. To see our kidnapped and hostages. Why are they not doing it? Why is it not a demand? Why are we giving in to such a resolution? So when the American came to us, and we discussed, and we believe, because we really don't aim to hurt the Palestinian people, then you can have a humanitarian convoy. But when we sit here in beautiful Vienna, it's very difficult to understand that the Hamas, when you bring in petrol, they take it from their own people. If you see the memory who's taking whose memory report, they're doing videos of, translation of videos and articles and whatever, and you see the Hamas person saying, the tunnels are for the protection of our people, of our warriors, our terrorists, and we want to protect the people.
But Ambassador, the kids don't have water to drink, and the hospitals cannot give them any help when they come out of bombed houses. There needs to be a lot more humanitarian aid. And that's not about fuel for Hamas. That is really about saving the lives of these innocent children.
When we entered this conflict, as difficult as it is, and I know you know this issue and the mistreatment of the aquifer, the water aquifer in Gaza, but still the large majority of water in Gaza, as well as most of the electricity, came from within. As I said, we do have humanitarian coming in. With regards to details coming out of Gaza, and you mentioned a few times 3,000 children or a number of children, and basing yourself on the report. Originally I didn't react to the 2 or 3 times that you mentioned it, because in all right, does it really matter if it's every child life matters. But I'm just very, very, I would cautious very much from of taking, it's just mind-boggling to me to say that these guys do what they do, and then 10 days later, when they report it, and the Palestinian hospital is bombed, and they report that it's Israel, and we have still not identified all of our losses. They already know that 500 people have been killed in that hospital, and the world press says, "Oh my God, we must believe what they're saying." But it's not an argument I wanted to go into too much, because it's people are suffering, people who don't need to be there to die are dying. I acknowledge it.
I think also
I am worried. I know 3 months. No, I don't know where you were going, but I when I look back at this interview, and I will hear it, I might be wrong, because I'm emotional at this point, and also might be thinking. I don't think we put much. I did. But I don't think any of the questions that I received dealt with the Israeli population, dealt with those that have been traumatized, dealt with those that have had to leave their houses, dealt with the people who are now under attack as well, the Israeli ones. None of them dealt with the Iran and what it has been doing, dealt with what has been going on from Lebanon side. So
I mean, honestly, I think we can also talk a lot longer about each of these issues, because there is a lot that has to be said about all of these. And I personally, like you, spend a lot of time on the phone with Israelis who are sitting in shelters, in houses, also in Tel Aviv. Also families that have been now moved to Eilat because their kibbutzim have been devastated by Hamas, who are also quite critical towards the government, the Israeli government, for not helping them properly. I also spend a lot of time with Israeli friends on the phone whose children have been drafted now into the army to defend Israel and going into Gaza, who don't have socks because they have no proper equipment for some astonishing reason. So there's a lot of questions that the Israeli government has to answer there, and a lot of trauma and a lot of pain on this side. So don't make the mistake, please, to think that we are not empathetic or sympathetic with the Israeli population. And but one thing that I think wanted to come to in this interview is also because you said there is no military solution to the conflict. So what is the political solution? Let's say there is no Hamas leadership in Gaza left, and the rest is in exile when this war finishes. You were very disappointed with the Palestinian Authority, you said, but you need someone to talk to about a political solution afterwards. Is it thinkable, for example, that a Palestinian leader imprisoned in Israel at the moment, Marwan Barghouti, could be released in this whole exchange of prisoners and hostages, and that he could be a person that could be a person you could talk to?
And with the first part, I want to make clear that I'm completely aware of my role and your role here. Your role is to ask a question. My role is to answer them. I am speaking about the balance of where one puts the priorities, and I'm I don't want to make a pre-assumption, but I will be very interesting to hear other podcasts that you've had, or the podcast that you will air as well, and to see how much emphasis was on the Palestinian authorities. What have they been doing throughout those years? How are they protecting their own people? Why are they not saying publicly that Hamas is a terrorist organization? And while they know that they will be the first one to go once Hamas is in power. And we know that not as a prediction, but because the first thing Hamas did when they took over Gaza is to throw the Palestinian Authority a person out of the high rise in Gaza. And yes, there are high rises in Gaza. With regards to where we are, so difficult to know. Your suggestion or your question is with regards, and I understand that question, is to replace one terrorist organization with another terrorist leaders. So I don't know. I can say whoever will lead the Palestinian people will not be a member of the Amnesty International. We're aware of that. I'm aware of that. Is there a Palestinian who's really willing to make the transition and lead the people to where they should go? I don't know who that person is. I don't know if it will be possible with this current leader of the Palestinian Authority. We will just have to see how things play around. This is a long, unfortunately, this is going to be a long conflict, and we believe that we have to win it. Because if we don't, with the way the population is roused up in the Middle East, the so-called moderate Arab regimes, what is going to be their fate? What is going to be the rise of Islamic? If we don't stop the Muslim Brotherhood in our area, how will it affect other countries? What will happen to the regional safety? What's going to happen with Iran? Very, very difficult question, which are even more important than the question of who will lead the Palestinian people. But my answer there, and I don't like to give it, is I don't know.
Ambassador Roet, thank you very much for this interview. And we very much hope that sometime it will be able to have a discussion on more in detail on peace and less about war and terrorism. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.